Hello, everybody, and welcome to the New Flame Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Andrew, along with Kareem, Dean, and a special guest, my brother, Josh. So, let's get right into the sports this past week with the NBA with Kareem and Dean. Thanks, guys. Let's head into the rest of the podcast, and where I'm going to introduce my brother, Josh.
Hi, thanks. It's great to be here.
So, like all of us, you are a big sports fan. So why don't you go ahead, tell us a little bit about yourself? You know, your favorite teams, your favorite sports moment that you've ever had.
Okay. Big Cowboys fan. Massive Cowboys fan. I'm a Boston Bruins fan. For the NHL fans out there, I'm a Memphis Grizzly fan for the NBA. I know doesn't make a lot of sense, but like the Grizz. And I'm a Yankees fan. Uh, the whole house is really, yeah.
Yeah, except for mom.
Except for mom. Yeah.
Alright. Why don't do you currently play any sports, or did you play any sports when you were younger?
When I was younger, I played some football all the way up to high school. Then I stopped. Currently, I play golf, it's a great game. I highly recommend playing golf, especially young people like you.
What is your favorite sports moment that you've ever had, whether it be playing sports or watching sports or
I guess my favorite sports memory watching sports would probably be the 1996 Super Bowl. Um, I was very young, and that's the first game I can truly remember sitting down and watching from beginning to end. Um, I became a Cowboys fan that night, and it's been a lot of years of disappointment since then. But it's got to be my favorite memory. I worshipped Emmitt Smith. Um, it was a lot of fun. I guess it's my favorite sports memory of watching sports.
what? So you said that you played football when you were younger. What is your either favorite play or your best play that you ever had when you played?
Uh, so I had it was a design sneak.
Designs.
Yeah. So the ball is hiked and it pretends to be a over hike in a shotgun formation, and the quarterback runs like he's dropped the ball or missed the hike. The I picked up the ball and ran for a touchdown. That was the best.
So you were a center, offensive
I was offensive line, the right tackle.
right tackle.
Um, I'd never played center now.
So you said that you're a fan of all four of the major sports.
Mm-hmm.
What is your favorite? Who is your favorite player on the teams?
Okay, so as of right now for the Dallas Cowboys, so I'm a big Dak Prescott fan. Mississippi boy, from Mississippi State, grew up there, and I'm glad to see him in that position. He's a great quarterback.
Arguably top five quarterback.
I mean, he's number one in my book. He's not the GOAT. He could be,
Could be.
but he's not yet. But my all-time favorite Dallas Cowboys got to be Emmitt Smith. Um, Ray Bork is my all-time favorite Boston Bruin. And then Jorge Posada is my favorite Yankee. I know probably a lot of people don't understand that pick, but big fan of catchers. I don't know why. Never played catcher.
You grew up watching Posada.
I did. I always liked Posada.
Part of that '90s dynasty. Those
Yeah.
10 years.
And then Marc Gasol with the Grizz. I know he doesn't play there anymore, but he was my favorite player for the Memphis Grizzlies. But I only just got into basketball probably within the last 5-6 years.
Yeah. So you don't really have that. You didn't dig it deep into it.
No.
So
And they're a younger team
yeah,
too.
Yeah. Why the Grizzlies?
Well, my college roommate was a big NBA fan, and I went to school in Mississippi, and when I couldn't come home to the family on vacations, he offered to take me up to Memphis to take me to a game, and it was a ball. I had a fun time. The FedEx Forum in Memphis, and who doesn't love an underdog? I mean, they're not a big franchise.
Yeah. Not the greatest of teams out there as of right now.
No, but it's fun. It's a regional thing.
Yeah.
You got to have one team that's not an all championship team, right?
Yeah. Like me, the Dolphins, 2 Super Bowls. But so yeah, that is my brother Josh, and let's head into the NFL, with the biggest headlines of the week being injuries. Now, I never like seeing players get injured, especially big stars like we're seeing this past week.
Yeah, you never want to see anybody get injured. It's rough.
But the 2 season-ending injuries of Saquon Barkley and Nick Bosa. Barkley, you could say top 3 running back easily in the league. Really, the only source of offense the Giants really had last year. I mean, Golden Tate was a good late season acquisition. That was really it. But Saquon Barkley, he can catch the ball. He can run over guys. He can juke them out of their shoes. It's a big loss. The Giants were not going to be very good anyway, but this is obviously a big blow. They're probably gonna finish last in that division because the football team is off to a good start, 1-1. But
well, do you think the Giants should just
tank?
Just tank for the year?
I mean, if they were to do that, I think they would have to improve. They would get a top 5, top 3 pick. They obviously wouldn't go Trevor Lawrence because they already have Daniel Jones, who they drafted last year, and they don't really, because they trust Daniel Jones to be their quarterback. So they would probably either improve that defense or that offensive line like they did this past season. But Nick Bosa as well for the 49ers, one of the top 5 players, you could say, even though only playing 1 year in the league.
Well, I think he just transformed that defense so much.
Yeah, he became the face of that defense, really. But now you lose him with the ACL tear, same injury as Barkley. But that entire 49ers team got beat up on that MetLife Stadium turf, which is what Kyle Shanahan said was the cause of all the injuries. Now, you could also say that it was because of the quick ramp-up, which is what a lot of people are saying about the MLB as well, especially James Paxton came out and said, we just ramped up too quick, there wasn't enough time.
Yeah, I think not having a preseason definitely hurt. You can't work your muscles into that kind of,
within 3, they only had the 3 or 4 week training camp and then right into the regular season.
And most of them weren't like full contact either.
No.
Yeah,
they only started really doing like full contact until like last week and a half. But also on the 49ers, we have Jimmy Garoppolo. Probably won't be out for probably 2 to 3 weeks. Still massive for that team. Ever since coming over the 49ers, he went 5-0 in that first year. 2018 was a little rough. Went 5-11, but then 2019, obviously they made it to the Super Bowl. But this team just took a beating, as well as Raheem Mostert, who has a strained MCL. So he's going to be out 4 to 6 weeks, maybe a little bit longer for his timetable. But
so, I'm sorry to interrupt, but what do you think about this moving forward for the 49ers? I mean, didn't you pick them to be your...
I did. I did pick them to win the division, but I did not see this coming. I don't think anyone did. But now, expect the Seahawks to make a push for that division crown. These next 4 to 6 weeks is where the Seahawks are really going to have to step up, win at least, let's say the 49ers are going to be struggling for the next 6 weeks. The Seahawks have to win at least 5 out of the next 6 games in order to pretty much almost clinch that division because really, if you think about it, the 49ers, in the next 6 games, they might win 2 games, 3. They won't win a whole lot, but it's tough. It's really tough for them. It'll be really tough for them to come back and win that division. Yeah. The last injury is Christian McCaffrey from the Panthers, the best running back in the league. His timetable is 4 to 6 weeks, but more realistically, that's going to be up to 10, especially if the Panthers are not a contending team in that loaded NFC South. Now on to the actual games of Week 2, we have the biggest upset, which is the Colts over the Vikings, 28-11.
See, I'm going to disagree with you, and I know it's on your list of games to talk about, but I think the Dallas-Atlanta game was the biggest upset.
Now, I wouldn't say that's much of an upset because people were saying that the Cowboys were going to win that game.
Yeah, but no one expected the score.
Yeah, no, people thought it was...
Or how the Cowboys would win.
Yeah, they thought it was going to be a lot... The Cowboys would win by a lot more. But Colts and Vikings, Kirk Cousins, he threw 3 interceptions, and... if you want to talk about this because you watched him when he was in Washington,
as a Cowboys fan, you love to see Kirk Cousins. I know he can put up yardage, and I know he's accurate, but you never felt like you were truly out of a game against Cousins because you never knew how the game would unfold with him. Some days he throws no picks, and then other days he's throwing 3. So, you hate to see people lose games, but, I can't say I'm totally shocked him throwing 3 picks against the Colts.
But Dalvin Cook also held under 75 yards with 63. He did have a touchdown, their only touchdown of the game.
See, that's more surprising to me, is Dalvin Cook's poor performance.
Yeah, because, Dalvin Cook has really shown himself when he's not injured that he can be a top 5 running back up there with McCaffrey and Barkley. But he only had 63 yards, like I said. That is just really poor performance. Now, I'm not really sure if it was the Colts' defensive line or the Vikings' offensive line, which led to maybe Kirk Cousins throwing the ball under pressure or Dalvin Cook not having a big game. But I want to ask you guys, if you guys watched the game and you think you know why it was such a big loss for the Vikings, go ahead and comment why you think. But on to the Dallas and Falcons game. Like Josh said, 40-39 Dallas with game-winning field goal by Greg Zuerlein as time expired. The onside kick with a minute left?
Minute 49, I believe, yeah.
Yeah, minute 49. But it's just like, if you go back and watch that play, there were 3 times that the Falcons could have just jumped on it, and then they just didn't.
Yeah, it's hard to fathom or explain why they did that. I'm glad they did. I am biased, but I have to say, as big as a play that was, and Dallas could not have won without getting that onside kick. I have to say the big hero really for Dallas is Dak Prescott. Big Dak Prescott fan. I think he's going to be a great quarterback in the NFL.
Has already proved that he is.
Absolutely. I'd like to see a few more playoff wins and in the future.
Playoff appearances.
Yeah, absolutely. But what I took away from that game was that Mike McCarthy gave the ball to Dak and said, "Go win this game." The defense kept him in the game. I mean, obviously, if you're giving up 39 points, there's a problem there.
Most of those points came in the first half. The Falcons' offense kind of just stalled out in the fourth quarter.
Again, I mean, yeah, they definitely stalled. But to go 450 yards
Yeah.
and 3 rushing touchdowns.
First QB to ever do that.
You know, just lots of props there. You have to.
You know, Mike McCarthy obviously proved that he could come back in games with the Packers. I mean, obviously, a bunch of credit goes to Aaron Rodgers and those Hail Marys that he kept getting.
Yeah, I mean, as a Dallas fan, you know, it hurts.
The 2016 playoff. I remember watching that game.
Yep.
And the sideline catch, you were just like, no.
No, I could not believe that catch.
It was a nice catch, though.
No.
And then, also, Zeke had 89 yards. He does not get kept under 100 a whole lot, but these were one of those times, and, you know, when you say Zeke had less than 100 yards and the Cowboys won, that just doesn't...
It's not a sentence you say often.
No, because when the Cowboys win, they win big. And most of that is to Zeke, because he goes off.
Well, I mean, it's really... When Zeke has got the ball, Dallas wins the time of possession game.
Yeah.
And that's how Dallas wins. They eat up clock and they eat up yardage with Zeke. When Dallas is in trouble, they lean heavy on Dak. And it's
wide receivers.
in those wide receivers, and that's what they did this time. And it worked out for us, but it's definitely when Dallas is in control, Zeke eats up.
Yep.
Gets fed.
And then the last game that we want to talk about is the Raiders and the Saints Monday Night Football. The Raiders, man, like, no one saw that coming. They beat the Saints.
I'm sure the Raiders fans saw it coming.
Yeah, the Raiders fans saw it coming. First game in their new stadium in Las Vegas. It's a really beautiful stadium. But Breeze could not move the ball really at all.
No. It was rough. He looked like Tom Brady versus the Saints.
Yeah, their performance kind of just flipped. Brady had a good game for the Bucs, but the big reason I think that Drew Brees didn't have a huge game and why the Saints lost that game was because Michael Thomas was out, and so therefore the Raiders defense knew to go cover Alvin Kamara, because once you take away Michael Thomas, there's really nothing other than Kamara. Now, Emmanuel Sanders is a good wide receiver. It's just when you know that when you only have to single team him and Jared Cook and Traquan Smith, you know you can double, even triple team Alvin Kamara to make sure he doesn't have a good game, which is the Bucs failed to do in Week 1.
Yeah, I got to watch most of the Raiders game, and I think they allowed Kamara to come get the ball, but they weren't allowing him more than 2 or 3 yards.
Yeah.
Very quick to stop him on the little bootlegs or the little pass outs to the flats.
Yeah.
And it really hurt the Saints. They could not stretch the field.
No.
And then also I would have to say the Raiders tight end.
Darren Waller,
had a great game.
Yeah, he's proving himself to be a good tight end for the
Raiders.
Tight end. Great, yeah. But another thing is that the non-stars for the Raiders. Now, the Raiders don't have a whole bunch of stars, but Josh Jacobs is definitely a top running back. Darren Waller, like we said, is a great tight end. But it was Zay Jones and their fullback, Alec Ingold, I believe is his name. He had a 4-yard receiving touchdown. But Zay Jones had 2 touchdowns, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 2 touchdowns for Zay Jones, who has not had a great career, but it was just that the Saints were worried about Waller. They were too worried about Josh Jacobs, who got bottled up.
I think that's what you can definitely see in the stats, that they were mostly worried about Josh Jacobs.
Yeah, because when it's 3rd and 1 for the Raiders, they go to Josh Jacobs.
Mm-hmm.
But now you saw Derek Carr going to Darren Waller.
Yeah, anytime they needed a first down, it was almost exclusively Darren Waller. And the Saints couldn't stop him.
Just could not. So that is going to do it for NFL Week 2. Now into Week 3, we have some games to watch. We have the Packers and the Saints. Like we said, the Saints coming off of a loss. Packers beat the Lions. Aaron Jones for the Packers had a good game, but he might be able to continue that against the Saints this week.
Mm-hmm.
But Cameron Jordan for the Saints is going to come off that edge and disrupt Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah, I mean, this is really a wake-up game for the Saints. I mean, this is a big game.
If they lose this game, they still 1-2.
Yeah, it's rough. And so the Packers are no team to sleep on, and it's going to be crucial for them to win that game. So it's really do or kind of die here early for the Saints.
Yeah. I mean, if they do lose this game, I don't think it's too much to worry about, but that concern does start to show up if you're Saints fans. Is Drew Brees starting to show his age a little bit?
It's like anything. The age is going to take its toll no matter what.
Time is not.
But you have to say, every game that you lose, the Bucks are there.
Yep.
Coming for any slip-ups.
Yep.
So they really need to go win this game.
They have to,
to keep the pressure up.
Next game is just going to be a really good game to watch. Chiefs and the Ravens on Sunday night, I think.
Yeah.
So
high scoring. I really hope I shouldn't say hope. I don't really
just doesn't
have
really
a game.
Against
right.
You because you're Cowboys.
But my fantasy league, I think Baltimore, if they run the ball again, like that's how they beat the Chiefs last year.
Yep.
Was they controlled the time of possession, and I hope Ingram has another great game.
Yeah. Obviously, they drafted J.K. Dobbins, the running back from Ohio State, in the draft, but it's going to come down to that running game, like you said. But the Ravens, I think the Ravens can pull this one out.
I think their defense is just better than the Chiefs.
Because the Chiefs, they only scored 20 points against the Chargers last week, who do have a really good defense with Joey Bosa and Melvin Ingram. But you have to see But if you want to see the Ravens win, then that rushing game has to be a big part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Then Raiders and Pats. This is one that you brought up actually when we were going over the games.
Yeah, I think this is, if the Raiders want to be taken as a big boy team, this is a game they have to win. I mean, you're talking about Bill Belichick, probably the greatest coach of all time, and you want to be taken seriously as a contender in the West. You got to go out and win games against the best, and proving yourselves against the Pats would definitely do that.
Big game. So that is going to do it for the NFL. Onto the MLB, where we have the playoffs coming up here within the next week. 8 games remain in the regular season. So the playoffs, I think the playoffs are pretty much set in the AL. There could be some shaking up within it. Obviously, the White Sox are creeping up on the Rays. The Yankees are creeping up on the Twins. But the Blue Jays have started to fall off a little bit. But I still think that they are going to make the playoffs just because of that strong start that they had to the season. And really, no one is really close to them. The closest team is 3.5 games out.
That's a lot of games, yeah.
Yeah.
With only 8 left.
Yeah. The Blue Jays got Teoscar Hernandez back this past week, who is their best player. But, yeah. Houston Astros are in the 7th seed. Even with this sign stealing scandal, they are still good hitters, because even though you knew what was coming, you still have to be able to hit it.
You still have to be able to hit it. I agree to that, but that rubs me the wrong way.
Yeah.
And we'll talk more about that later.
I don't like the Astros. It's just obviously I'm a Yankees fan, and they beat us, cheated us out of a World Series appearance in 2017. Maybe non-2019, probably, maybe in 2019. But, and then Cleveland, who just clinched the playoffs last night at number 6. Yankees at number 5, but they're only 1.5 games back of the Twins for 4th place, and that would be big because if you go into 4th place, that means you play the 5th seed at home, and then you would either play the White Sox or the Astros, whoever won that game, wins that series. But then in 3rd place we have the A's, who clinched the division, who look really good, but the A's just don't know how to win in the playoffs. They were up by 3 runs last year in the wild card game. They blew that game to the Rays. But it's just the Oakland they do really good in the regular season, and once it gets to the playoffs, they just kind of stall right there. Number 2 seed we have the White Sox, which is just people expected the White Sox to be decent this year. They didn't expect them to be the number 2 seed in the AL.
I think that's just, what the short season can do for you.
Yeah, there's only 60 games. Then in the number 1 spot, we have the Tampa Bay Rays, who I think are gonna win the division. I don't like it, obviously, but I think that's what it's gonna come down to. But so that's gonna do it for the American League. Onto the National League, we have the Dodgers, Padres, which is weird because the top 2 teams are in the same division. Like, that's just nothing you see really that often.
Mm-hmm.
And, Fernando Tatis and Manny Machado, that left side of the infield for the Padres is absolutely incredible. But in 3rd place, we have the Braves and the Cubs. 5th and 6th place, we have the Cardinals and the Marlins. And 7th and 8th, we have the Reds and the Brewers. Now, the Reds have started to pick it up as of late. I think a week ago they were not in the playoffs, but now they are currently in the playoffs at the 7th seed. And then closing in on the outside, we have the Giants, who are actually tied with the Brewers for the 8th seed. And then the Phillies and the Mets. Phillies are 1 game behind the San Francisco Giants, and the Mets are 2.5 games. Now, I don't think the Mets are gonna make the playoffs. It's just that starting pitching, other than DeGrom, it's questionable. Michael Walker, who they got in the offseason, has not been good. They've had a few good starts from David Peterson. Marcus Stroman did not play this season, which is obviously big. Noah Syndergaard also was injured, but the Phillies have not looked good as of late either. That bullpen is probably the worst in the league. Ever since they got Brandon Workman, it's just not looked good. He has high 6 ERA since joining the Phillies. It's that bullpen. If they do somehow manage to make the playoffs and squeeze ahead of the Giants, they won't make it past the first round, because if they make it as the 8th seed, they're going to have to play the Dodgers, which is just, it's not going to be a good time for Phillies fans. That's all I'm going to say about that. So this has been something that I've been wanting to talk about for a while now. I just haven't been able to do it, whether it's because of time or whatever, but it's the Houston Astros cheating scandal back in 2017. So I think this is really important to me. So I'm gonna put out all my thoughts right here. So let's just start with how they did it. Alex Cora had a monitor showing the center field camera placed right outside of the dugout. A player or staff member would look at the monitor and decode the signs, and then once they were decoded, they would either whistle, clap, or bang on trash cans. They eventually decided that banging on trash cans was the most effective, so that's what they went with about 2 months into the season. So that's how they did it, but now let's talk about who's responsible, because this had to go through so many different layers of that organization that it's almost sick. It almost makes me sick about how this fell through and why they decided to do it. Now, people would instantly say it's AJ Hinch, or it's the GM, Jeff Luhnow, or it's Jim Crane, who's the owner. But that's somewhat true. In Rob Manfred's investigation, it found out that players said that if the minute AJ Hinch or anyone said shut it down, they would have. Now, you may be asking, why didn't anyone do that? It's because the Astros were winning, and winning gets to people's heads, like, we'll do whatever it takes. And then you could also be like, this is also on the players, because they should have been like, hey, let's stop this. This is wrong. This is not how we're supposed to be playing the game. But yet again, I think it came down to the winning and the amount of winning that the Astros were doing in 2017 that drive them to keep doing this. So now, after the investigation, Rob Manfred, the commissioner of the MLB, handed out punishments. The team was fined $5 million, which is the most a team can be fined at a single time. They lost the 2020 first round pick and second round pick of the draft, and next year's as well. AJ Hinch, Jeff Luhnow, and Alex Cora, who became the Red Sox manager, were all suspended for this year without pay. Alex Cora and AJ Hinch were both fired, along with Carlos Beltran, who was the new manager for the Mets. He got fired like 2 weeks into his job. So that was the punishment. It's really weak, to be honest. I just don't think it's enough. Now, the fallout, Alex Cora and AJ Hinch were both immediately fired, like I said. Carlos Beltran was also fired. Now, Josh, why don't you give your opinions and then I'll go second.
Absolutely. It was a sad day. As a Yankees fan, obviously you're upset that your Yankees get cheated out of a World Series appearance.
Possibly twice.
As a Yankees fan, you're always expecting the Yankees to do well, and you're always going to see them there. But how about those teams that were on the border?
Yeah.
Who could have made the dance, the playoffs, but didn't get to because they got beat by the Astros.
Which is something that some of the players said. It was like some guys got called up for the big leagues for one start. They got lit up by the Astros and then right back down, and that ended their career.
Those are going to be the stories that I have the biggest issues with. I agree with the punishments aren't strong enough.
Especially towards the actual players themselves.
Especially towards the players. Obviously, we all have bosses in the world. But you play a game that's reputation goes back hundreds of years, and there's a sense of dignity, there's a sense of respect towards the game. There's a difference between a second baseman trying to figure out what you're calling.
Yeah, like a guy on second base leaning into the catcher. Like, that's totally fine. As a pitcher or catcher, you gotta be like, props to you. Like,
you figured it out.
You figured it out. Now we have to change up our game plan.
But an institutionalized system of recording and then sending it to batters, there aren't words enough to how disappointed I am.
Yeah.
It's really that. It's a real sad disappointment that these guys, these superstars who make the money that they do for a game that we all love, had to stoop to stealing. And it rocks your faith in the game, and it rocks your faith in how the people in charge are going to prevent this from happening again.
Yeah, because this completely slipped under everyone's noses. There were a few pitchers who noticed, like Danny Folkwall from the White Sox, and it's like you were saying, it's sad, it's sickening. It's that a team who
who is good.
They are good players because obviously you know what pitch is coming, you know like where it's gonna be or whatever, but you still have to be able to hit it.
Mm-hmm.
Like if the Astros were cheating in 2019, they found nothing about that. I'm not saying that they did. I'm not making any accusations, but if they were, and then Chapman threw the changeup, which like as a hitter, it's 0-2 against Aroldis Chapman. How do you not expect a fastball? He throws it 100 to 102 miles an hour on an almost daily basis, and it's 0-2, which is a pitch he would use almost. You would use the fastball on 0-2 a whole lot. He didn't go to the changeup or his slider, which he's been resorting to now. But the fact that you know the changeup is coming, you still have to be able to hit it, but it's like...
It just gives you an unfair advantage.
Yeah. Yeah. But, so, it's just... Like we said, we're biased Yankees fan. Like, let's be honest here.
Mm-hmm. But it's I go to Mike Trout. I mean, I can't agree more with what he says. It's sad for baseball. He doesn't agree with the punishments.
I don't think anyone did.
The players, they're the ones who still did it. You know, and they. At no point, there's no records of anybody going, I don't want to be a part of this.
There were a few that they found, but it wasn't like it was Jose Altuve or Alex Bregman. It was these lower guys who don't really get a chance to play every day.
Mm-hmm. But no, absolutely. It's but for the most part, the whole team... I think what you say,
this was a
team effort. They were winning, and
it got to their head.
Yeah.
But a couple player reactions that we want to comment on, like Josh said, Mike Trout, he said it's sad for baseball. I think it really is. I don't think anyone can disagree with that. He said it perfectly in 4 words. But Mike Trout is obviously not a player that speaks out a whole lot, and for him to comment is something that people take notice of, because Mike Trout is the best player in all of baseball, and for him to say something, it's really important. Another guy, Bryce Harper, like we said, it's these guys that don't play every day for other teams that they get called up for one game against the Astros, and they get charged with 8 runs in 2 innings, and they get sent back to the minors and then they retire because they feel like they don't. Their confidence is shot. But then another guy is Chipper Jones. Josh, you were the one who really was talking about this.
I like Chipper's opinion. Chipper was, a great player, especially during my time. What I like about Chipper's comment was that he didn't want to jump on the bandwagon of condemning everybody right away.
Yeah. No, because people will be like, "Oh, this is just, this was everyone." It wasn't really, but yeah. He says his exact quote is, "Please don't jump to conclusions until you know the whole story," which is true.
But I think there's enough time now that we kind of know the whole story.
Yeah.
But I just liked his reaction.
Yeah. And now another thing that we want to comment is David Ortiz. He didn't necessarily talk about the actual sign stealing. He brought up Mike Fiers, who was the player to report this, and he said, "I'm mad at the pitcher who came out talking about it. Why don't you talk about it during the season when it was going on? Why didn't you say, I don't want to be no part of it? Now you look like a snitch. Why didn't anybody say anything while it was still going on?" And I 100% agree with this.
Mm-hmm.
Because now Mike Fiers is... Because, like, people are like, oh... Because at first I was like, oh, this man is a legend. Like, this... Like, he broke one of the biggest stories in baseball since 2000. And you could say... I mean,
sure.
But now, looking back and reading David Ortiz's comment, I'm like, yeah, he's right. Because he, like we were saying, it's all about the winning. He wanted to see how many rings he could get out of it.
Yeah, it's good for the goose when it's going on, and then not when it's bad.
Yeah.
So, with what I think David Ortiz points out is that it's hypocritical of the pitchers to once be traded, then go, oh, they were doing this.
It's just
so
yeah, it's just I don't want to say immature, but
it goes beyond immaturity. It goes to selfishness and a lack of respect.
Yeah, lack of respect for the game, like you were saying, like the dignity that comes with baseball. But yeah, and then another thing that I want to comment is Rob Manfred. He, during a press conference, he said that asking for a piece of metal back is a futile act. Now, that piece of metal that he is referring to is the Commissioner's Trophy, obviously named after the Commissioner, who is Rob Manfred. And most people don't know that it's called the Commissioner's Trophy. Most people just say, oh, it's a World Series trophy, whatever. And I almost want to say that Manfred didn't know what it was called. So he could just call it out, and just not know. But as the commissioner, you have to know that you're almost disrespecting yourself in a way.
I think it's a simple lack of respect to all the other players. Now, I understand what he's saying is that how would this look? How do we take away a trophy from a team that won?
Yeah.
It
2
doesn't.
years ago.
Yeah,
3 years ago.
3, whatever. But I think what he didn't go enough. I think there has to be still serious repercussions to all the players that were part of this.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to see them all banned
from the Hall of Fame.
From possibly the Hall of Fame.
Kind of like a Pete Rose situation.
Absolutely.
Because, like, if you take... We were talking about this the other day. You look at Pete Rose, he never bet against his team to lose.
Right.
And he's banned from all of baseball?
All of baseball. And
the Hall of Fame, all stadiums, traveling with the team, spring training, everything.
Everything.
He's not allowed to step foot in a major league stadium.
I don't know if, is the MLB saying, oh, we treated Pete Rose too harshly? But does that take away from not treating these guys harsh enough?
Yeah.
I think that's an important question to ask. So.
And then another thing in that press conference I want to bring up is that Manfred says, people will always know that something was different about the 2017 season, and whether we made that decision right or wrong, we undertook a thorough investigation and had the intestinal fortitude to show the results of that investigation. Don't you have to release the findings of that investigation?
Well,
that's kind of like your number one thing.
I think people would have requested. I think humans have a tendency to cover things up that are embarrassed. So I'm proud that the MLB, released those findings without a lot of prodding.
Yeah, because people were obviously once Manfred came out and said we're going on an investigation, people were like, we want to see the findings.
Yeah, we have to know. But I think the biggest issue is the MLB not going far enough with its punishments.
And then one last thing about this that I want to comment on is the Joe Kelly situation back on July 28th. Now, Josh, you you haven't really been paying attention to this whole saga.
Not the Joe Kelly situation. No.
So what happened with Joe Kelly was he was on the Red Sox, who in 2017, which were beat by the Astros. So, and then he joined the Dodgers, and that whole stigma of the Astros championship should go to the Dodgers.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I won't get into a whole lot of detail, but I don't think so, because if you take away the Astros from that season, maybe the Yankees win it.
Right, and that's the rabbit hole you go down of
Yeah.
if you try to take away that
championship.
trophy, is that we would never know
No.
who would have won in a fair game.
Yeah.
But you have to imagine that the Astros may not have made the playoffs.
Yeah.
So it's too much of a rabbit hole to
you
go,
have to go down.
let's take it away.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily
I think
agree with
there
that.
should be an asterisk next to it.
Sure, absolutely.
But so anyway, Joe Kelly back on July 28th of this year. It was the Dodgers and the Astros. He threw behind 3 different players, either brushed them off the plate or threw behind their backs. Astros were having none of it. Carlos Correa was the main guy who was like, "What are you doing?" And then Manfred comes out and is like, "You get 8 games suspended." And for a reliever, it's like they get used like every other day. That's still 4 or 5 appearances that he gets taken away from. Mm-hmm. Now, he did appeal it, and it was reduced down to 6, which is still too much. It should have been 2.
I don't think, because Joe Kelly didn't hit anybody.
You don't think he should have gotten any?
I don't think he should have gotten anything. I mean, there is kind of the understood rule in baseball is that, you hit my player, I'm going to hit one of yours.
Yeah.
It's part of the sport, as always has been. But you can't say that Joe Kelly hit anybody. Because he didn't. So
he did get close to their head, but that's really it.
So it's hard for me to say. It's like swatting at a friend of yours and going, brushing, not even touching him, and then getting in trouble for fighting at school.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't physically fight.
No.
You didn't intend to hit him.
Yep. It was just
you just made a statement that, hey, I know what you did. I don't appreciate it.
Yeah. And then basically what Manfred said, but he didn't say, this is what I'm interpreting from giving him 8 games, is that if you dare hit one of them, you'll be out for close to 15 games. Because maybe not that extreme, but you will face serious punishments.
Well, I mean, obviously you don't want anybody to get hurt.
No.
You don't want players to hit other players
Yeah.
with a 90-mile-per-hour fastball.
No.
But there has to be some kind of protection for those players. But I think the Joe Kelly situation is just wrong.
He basically gave the players immunity, is what he did. But it's...
So, in summary, if you look at it at that point, you cheat, win a World Series, and...
nothing happens.
Yeah, even the league's own way of correcting
this
rule infractions gets taken away out of the player's hands.
Yeah. But I think that's going to do it for the Astros cheating scandal. To sum it up in 4 words, like Mike Trout said, it's sad for baseball. That was our takes on it. You guys go ahead and let us know what you think down in the comments below. But that is going to do it for this week's episode of the New Flame Sports Podcast. We'll see you next week. Goodbye. That's going to do it for this week's episode. As always, I'm Andrew. Thanks to Kareem and Dean for their insight on the NBA playoffs, and special thanks to my special guest, Josh. We'll see you here next week for week number 4.